Well, good morning. Today we're talking with Audrey Lucas, Managing Partner of the Minneapolis office of McKinsey Company and also a Greater MSP board member. Thank you for taking a few minutes to talk with the Greater MSP region today about your insight. You and I have been talking pretty frequently over the past couple of weeks as we're trying to get real-time visibility to what's happening in the economy in Minnesota and across the country and the globe. And we've been chatting about how it's smart to start thinking about how we can move from crisis to recovery as soon as it's responsible to do so. One of the realizations that we've had, I think, together across the state and region is how much more connected we are in Minnesota to the rest of the world, to society and the economy than we even realized. And to that end, McKinsey Company is a global firm. And your partners in Asia saw the health and economic impacts of COVID-19 at the start of the crisis. And you've been sharing and learning as a global entity as this pandemic spread across the world. So can you just tell us, what you've been learning along the way over the past few weeks?
Thanks, Peter. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, we have been learning for several months now. And frankly, we continue to do so every single day as this is moving incredibly fast and the situation is very fluid, as you know. In North America, we've been supporting well over 50 private and public sector mobilization efforts. We're helping several states respond as well. And obviously, we protect our clients' confidentiality, but many of the learnings that we're having are shareable and we want to make them available to everyone. So some of our learnings, we've learned the importance of acting early to control the spread of the virus. We've learned the need to work several different domains in an integrated manner, such as the health system capacity, societal compliance, industry safeguarding, and overall economic health. And we've learned that that is truly challenging work. Finally, we've learned that this crisis is unlikely to unfold in linear stages. You just said, hey, when we get through this crisis, we'd like to start thinking about recovery. We don't believe that's the way this is going to work. Instead, we think we're going to have to throttle the intensity of different interventions, whether they be health or economic based, up or down based on the situation on the ground and the facts as we understand them at that time.
Well, as you said, health and economic response and recovery are intertwined. And obviously we have to remain focused on containing COVID-19. Two of McKinsey's recent research pieces discuss how there are really two related imperatives, two must-dos that involve safeguarding our lives and our livelihoods. What do we need to do right now on both of those fronts simultaneously?
Yeah, we're just beginning to understand the economic impact of the measures that we're taking here and elsewhere to control the virus. The impact of the lockdowns in specific that we're taking in Minnesota, most of the US, across much of Europe, is more severe than anything that any of us have experienced before. People aren't traveling. They're not going to bars, they're not going to workout clubs, they're not getting their hair cut. You'll see that in mine pretty shortly. And they're not shopping except for essentials. And McKinsey's been researching this, as you understand. MGI is estimating that between 40 and 50% of our discretionary consumer spend may not occur during lockdown, 40 to 50%. And many services like travel are going to reduce to near zero. All of that translates to something that we're estimating near a 10% reduction in GDP. That's huge.
I mean, so these numbers, they're staggering numbers, right? Things that we haven't seen before, certainly not at this speed and scale. How can we process that? How do we translate that in a way that we can really kind of make sense of it?
Yeah, I like to think in terms of the average Minnesotan, really. And first, I'd love to talk a little bit about what this state is doing. And frankly, the governor and his team have made some really difficult but vital decisions to protect Minnesotan lives. The only proven approach that we've seen across the globe to contain the virus once it has reached community spread is through enforcing lockdowns and through disciplined physical distancing. So I'd really encourage all of us to take a moment and thank the governor and his team for the tremendous work that they're undertaking on behalf of all of us. But those decisions have a really important impact on Minnesotan livelihoods. According to DEED, and I think you know these numbers well, Peter, about 338,000 Minnesotans applied for unemployment as of April 3rd. If we continue the lockdown, these numbers are going to continue. And right now, with the expected continuance, we can see numbers that double or even more those numbers going forward. And what does that mean to the average Minnesotan? Well, we know that about 25% of US households are living paycheck to paycheck. And 40% of Americans are unable to cover an unexpected expense of even $400 without borrowing. As you think about these unemployment numbers, as you think about the impact on the typical Minnesotan household, this can be nothing short of catastrophic for many of us.
Well, and as we were saying before, I mean, we knew a lot of these things were true a month ago and 2 months ago before this crisis. And in some ways, the pressure of this economic shock has just brought to the surface a lot of these, near to the surface challenges that were there. And rather than changing what we thought was the future is going to look like, it might be just pulling it closer. And so we have less time to adjust to that. But I mean, in your view, and based on the analysis that McKinsey's been doing nationally and globally, like, what could we be doing to minimize the impact on Minnesota's economy now? And then how could business help do that?
Yeah, just to comment maybe on your thought about the move to a digital world, or the need to really prepare. I think we're seeing even in Asia already that those companies that were starting to prepare for a digital world, for a more analytical world, et cetera, are the ones that are coming out of the first wave of the crisis much stronger. So, having that agility, that flexibility, and that digitization is truly helping many. But as we think about, here in Minnesota and how we can, best safeguard our Minnesotans' livelihoods, I start with how long are we talking about, and what kinds of things can we be thinking about? Most experts are saying that the virus could have an impact for 12 to 18 months, which is, a long enough time horizon that we really need to be exploring ways for the government to safely release parts of the economy, to really, and to create other measures to spur economic activity. Mm-hmm. As you said earlier, right, we should only be thinking about these measures once there's enough facts, enough data to really indicate to us that we've broken the curve or flattened the curve on the spread of the virus. But we need to be thinking about those now and know what the priority of those levers could be for us in Minnesota. And as I think of, the things that we should be exploring, I think of the safeguards that are happening in Asia and already in many parts of the US around, how do we put in place physical barriers? How do we make sure that more of our workers are wearing face guards? How do we enforce social distancing? How do we make sure that employees, as they enter warehouses, are taking tests and health screenings right there on site? And it's really widespread use of these safeguards that are allowing many places in Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, others to demonstrate that they can, relax some of the restrictions and spur economic activity. Here in the United States, many states that are either a bit further ahead of us in terms of their experience with the virus, or have already had in place some of these measures, are using them to spur economic activity. Three that are top of mind for me. One, I think about testing frequency, and I think about the need to really understand who is healthy and who is not as we encourage employees to go back to work. And I think the work that Massachusetts has done there to really focus on that is admirable, right? They've seen testing levels increase from about 200 to 400 a day to over 5,000 a day. New York, Washington State are also working on those sorts of increases. Second, we talked about the need to really get people back to work, but many of the people who are available for work need to be redeployed, right? So many people, are working in areas that are no longer in demand. And they're going to have to go back to work in new jobs, right? There are jobs even available now, right? There are thousands of jobs available in grocery, in delivery, even certain pockets in healthcare, of course. But there are no jobs to be found right now in travel or in other parts of retail, apparel and home goods, those sorts of things. So how do we match workers with high demand roles? New Jersey is doing, something that I think is quite interesting with their jobs portal. They've got about 10,000 jobs, posted there now. Certainly some of the work that Greater MSP has historically done around talent matching can be accelerated in this time. And I'm excited to work with you to do some of that. And I'm sure the rest of the state will rally around that. And then, third, as you think about redeploying workers, many of those workers are going to be less qualified for positions than they may have traditionally been, right? So we're going to have to ease barriers for our employers, make it feel a bit less risky to take a chance on less qualified workers. And several states are exploring ways of doing that by providing incentives to employers for training or reskilling efforts. Illinois has an emergency hospitality grant that's out there, and that is explicitly to be used for job training as one of many purposes. But, what I'd say, just stepping back is that businesses can really help by identifying safeguards that they can be taking and enforcing them. They can think about ways that they can better, match the available workers with jobs that they have, both within their own businesses and frankly within the Minnesotan economy writ large, and work with the state, work with entities like Greater MSP to figure out how to do that matching. And really coming out of this crisis, as I think about it, is going to depend upon the actions of all of us. And I know many leaders have said that, but I can't agree with it more.
Well, that's really helpful. Being able to look around the corner and see what other places are doing and the success that they're having is something that it has to be a discipline that we're engaging in right now. And I think the theme is creative problem solving. When the world changes, we have to adapt, we have to be agile. Something that I'm seeing is, I'm talking to leaders across the region. There's this real need to reach across the boundaries, city to county, large company to small company, public to private sector, because when all the systems are askew, we have to solve these problems together.
Agree.
What are you seeing either in this market, or across the country and the world in terms of some of that cross-sector creative problem solving?
I've been really inspired in that dimension, Peter. I have seen, as an example, food service distributors with excess inventory reaching out to grocers and volunteering that inventory and helping them get it on the shelves. I've seen, suppliers of cleaning goods reach out to grocers and to other, essential workplaces. Of course, we have, here in Minnesota, distilleries who are offering to change over their manufacturing to create sanitizer, right, and donating that. I mean, there's so many opportunities for all of us to be, redeploying our skills, our assets to really help in this fight.
You need that creativity, and then we need to follow the numbers. We need good information, and the numbers are changing, every day. To that point, McKinsey's been doing some really important work to pull together the learnings across the globe. And we're going to make some of that analysis available. We'll link to it in this video because we touched on a number of themes at a fairly high level here, but there's a lot of depth if people want to drill down into that. And I know there are a lot of people looking for more of a national and a global picture, so we have some context about what we're experiencing. Anything else? What else would you want to share with the partners across Greater MSP during this time?
I think your observation about the special nature of this community, this business, this private, this public sector connection is one that I would just emphasize. And I think it's the strength of the partnership and the strength of this community that is going to get us through to the other side in, I hope, an even better position than we are today. And I've been so encouraged by the conversations that I've had. I know you've had many, but with leaders across the different sectors and what they're trying to do to really protect their employees, to spur economic activity, but being very thoughtful of all the implications of their actions on the greater community.
I mean, as of today, Minnesota has the lowest infection rate, per capita of any of the states, which is a testament to our ability to come together and be disciplined. And it may also mean that we will need to start thinking about recovery, or we'll have the option to start thinking about recovery before other parts of the country.
Right.
It's sensitive as we go deeper into a crisis to be talking about recovery, but we really need to be doing these things in parallel so we're ready. Being ready seems to be critical for all of us in this time.
I believe you're right, Peter. And I'm excited that, so many business leaders are starting to think ahead toward that, and, are willing to really engage in that conversation, not to take action too early, but to be prepared, just as you described.
Right. Well, thank you again for taking some time to talk through this and for sharing some of the McKinsey insight more widely across the partnership. And I know we'll be talking very soon. So
thank you, Peter.
Best of luck in your work.
You too.